Hey everybody, my name is Ben Warniak, better known as Ben of the Forest on social media and Instagram, and welcome to the start of my YouTube channel. I've wanted to start exploring more long-form content as a way to steer away from the catchy, viral Instagram videos, which are fun in their own way, but there's so much of this job that I feel like slips through the cracks with all those videos. So this would be a great way to kind of walk everyone through what we actually do out here, because there's a lot of questions I get on a day-to-day basis of what's actually going on, because this is such a niche version of tree work that most people don't actually see. So to give you an idea of what we're actually watching here, this is a western red cedar we had to remove for a transmission line way out in one of the inlets there. It's super difficult to access. We travel by boat up this inlet with all of our gear to access an off-highway network. There's trucks waiting for us up there, and then we can kind of scoot around as we need, but these trees are virtually inaccessible for any public access, so this power company brings us out to hang out up here for a month or so, and we just tackle danger tree targets previously marked. As you can see, they can be pretty sizable and difficult. This one's a really good example of just a classic western red cedar. Had a ton of root rot, rotten at the butt, and leaned towards the line with this big school marm that's popping off. This was the first day trying out my new drone, so I decided to film Hogan doing this tree. I'm kind of hanging out down at the road, making sure everything looks good down there while he does all the hard work, and I supervise. For those that don't know Hogan, he's one of our top climbers and the son of Buck and Billy Ray. And if you're on YouTube, I'm sure you've heard that name before. He's a pretty prominent figure in the tree industry. And Hogan's out here keeping the family name alive and well. He's an absolute pleasure to work with. So for those of you watching this going, I don't know any of those names, who's that guy, what are they doing, why is this guy in a tree? Let me give you a bit of a background. We work for a company called Integrated Operations Group. We specialize in unique ways of harvesting timber, such as single stem and salvage, relying heavily on heavy lift helicopters to move the wood off the hill. This project's a bit different. This is more of a seek and destroy mission for danger trees. We still use helicopters to access some of the higher up stuff, but the main difference is we aren't harvesting this wood. This is just more single tree removals in hard to reach areas. It definitely takes a certain type to be out here and enjoy what we're doing, and in the future I'm going to try and do more video series showcasing what it takes to get up to these trees, because a lot of the times half the battle is just walking up to these guys with the amount of gear we have to carry. Our bags, our climbing gear, our ropes, our saws. So sometimes it'll be one guy in the tree, but it'll take three guys to carry the gear up to it. So I want to do more videos like that to just show you what actually goes into this, because it's cool to look at this and say, yeah, this guy's taking the top off there and looks like a fun job and they get to go in helicopters, but I don't think people really understand how much bullshit we actually go through to get a lot of this done. So this is going to be a fun outlet for that. I'm really excited to lean into the creativity of YouTube and the long form content to allow me to show you guys what Integrated does on a day-to-day basis versus just the glory shots in the trees and the catchy videos. So I hope you all enjoy these longer videos. It's definitely a lot more work on my end, but I'm super proud of what we do and I really want to showcase this style of tree work. I had a lot of fun filming this video too. I recently picked up a drone off one of the camera crew guys when we were filming some of the TV show Timber Titans. I really wanted to get a drone to start doing more of this stuff, and I think it turned out really well. I'm still trying to figure out the camera controls, kind of going up and down and here and there. I'm not a smooth operator by any means, but it's a cool piece of machinery, and it helps us a lot too in this line of work, because a lot of the time we can look up the hill and maybe see a tree poking out and you have to hike to it and figure out which one it is. But with the drone, I can just throw it in the air and go fly up to these targets and make a plan without actually having to leave the truck and put all our gear on if we're going to the wrong spot. So this is a huge time saver and a huge game changer, and I'm really stoked to be using it. And for anyone out there that's a drone nerd, it's the Mavic Pro 2. I got one and I got a spare one off the camera guy for a great deal. Came with 7 batteries, so I got a lot of flight time and I plan on using it as much as I can. So let's talk cutting. This is a great example of what to do when you're in an oversized tree with a smaller saw. This is basically the climbing equivalent of coming up to a big tree on the ground with a falling saw and you gotta double cut it. You can see the tip of the bar buries in the wood about halfway through, so it's almost double bar length for that little saw. And we don't really have the luxury a lot of the time of bringing up a big saw just to take a top, so we get pretty comfortable just taking oversized tops with these 201s. It's a 16-inch bar, so it's pretty small, but if you do it right, you can get away with quite a bit. So he's going to move around the tree there, and he's going to bury that tip in and push it out the far side. It's an incredibly useful falling technique. So as you can see, he's just pushing it through, and he's going to have to line that tip up with the kerf of his cut from the top and try and feel it out and push it through. This is a technique you'll see fallers using on the ground to cut oversized wood. When they can't reach the low side, they'll have to stand on the high side, reach their tip through, and push it through. We can move around the tree a little bit easier as climbers, so it's not totally necessary to do that, but once you get comfortable doing it, it works great. So he's lined his cuts up, he's pushed his undercut out, then it's just a quick touch up on the far side to make sure his cut's lined up nice, and to make sure there's no Dutchman's left before he starts his back cut up there. Another unique thing in forestry is carrying all this extra fuel and oil with you. I get comments online often when people see the jets going up and they're like, oh, you're carrying the kitchen sink up there. It looks like it, but it's actually super useful. You can go all day without having to send your saw down for a refuel. So I don't know why more people don't do it. It's definitely unique to us at this point, and it seems like the way to go. Like, I don't think I'll ever climb a tree without fuel on my belt again. So here's the money shot. He's done the work to get to the top of the tree, undercuts out, back cut's going in. And there it goes. So we try and climb these up high enough that the top will never reach the lines or limits of approach if you know anything about power lines and utility work. It's essentially a set of rules on how close you can get to a power line for the voltage that the power line is. So these lines are 230 kilovolts and you can come within about 15 feet of them for what we're doing. That includes debris, tops, anything. So we're well clear of the lines up on this one. He sent it straight side hill, so it had no risk of hitting the lines. If there's something a bit more challenging, we can rig it back, use ropes, use blocks, use what we need. But for the most part on this project, we can just climb these things out to a point that we can send them side hill or just piece them down. Small piece, small problem, as they say. Finally, he's got one more chunk to take off here. Usually we shorten this to a point where if the stub were to fall, it wouldn't hit the lines even if it did rot out and die. So we'll take the top off in a safe way, then we usually down climb it to a point where we can just take a chunk off and leave it standing at that height. You can see two trees in the background there from previous years that we've done a similar thing to. They needed to come out for the power line and they've been standing like that for a couple of years. So this one's going to join its friends in being a nice stub that'll never affect the power lines. So what I did in video there was Hogan pulling up the big saw. He's got himself a nice Dolmar, 90cc saw, 36-inch bar, full house chain. It's quite the unit. I think it was one of his dad's saws. It's got quite the pipe on it. I'm sure I'll get to show you later. Called the Ram's Horn, and it is possibly the loudest thing in the world. I apologize this doesn't have audio. It would probably break your speakers if it did though. So the plan here is more the same. Cut up the tree, send it side hill. This one's a bit easier though because you have a bar that actually matches the width of the tree, so it doesn't have to do any fancy cutting. It's just a matter of lining your cuts up, cutting from a comfortable position, and making sure that log lands in a place that's going to lock in on the hillside and not go tumbling down the hill. We're definitely lucky in forestry that we don't have a lot of targets below that we can hit. There's the power line, obviously, but it's pretty easy to get away with not hitting that thing as long as you know what you're doing. A lot of us come from a residential background where you're trying to avoid people's houses and not damaging lawns and stuff like that, so it's pretty satisfying in forestry to just be able to send a chunk down, let it detonate on the ground, and then cut it flat so you don't have to worry about it poking up and being a problem in the future. This is one of the only avenues in this line of work where you can actually do that, so it's pretty satisfying. We enjoy doing it. But the trade-off is having to deal with this terrain and this weather. This was a nice weather day for us. We had a bit of fog, a bit of cloud cover, but it was pretty mild, so made our lives a lot easier out there. But most of the time, you're going to get heavy rain days, you're going to get weather days. It's a struggle against nature when we're doing this kind of work. There's no sitting in the pickup to warm up like you would in somebody's yard. We're kind of fighting the elements on a day-to-day basis, which is what we signed up for. So if you complain about the rain, it's just never going to go away. So we just layer up and prepare for the worst. When we're doing remote access heli sites, we'll bring pad kits and overnight kits, so we have first aid and everything on the hill with us. But this was kind of a luxury, just getting to do some roadside stuff. It was a bit of a hike up to that tree for the guys, but at least we weren't on a hillside somewhere with no access to get out. Usually the goal of an arborist is to get these pieces to lay flat, but we'd rather just send a big chunk, deal with the consequences later. It's a lot easier, as long as it's not going to hit the line, that's the biggest concern. We can go buck something. So that's as low as that tree's going to have to go. That's how it's going to stay for a long, long time, looking like that. The value of leaving stubs like that is for wildlife. These are all assessed by professional foresters beforehand, and they'll tell us to leave wildlife stubs where we can. So that big arm there is going to go great for nesting. The tree's well out of the way of the lines. We never have to worry about it rotting and falling over and damaging anything, so we can just forget about it. We'll check in on it year after year, make sure it still holds its value and looks all right. If it is a problem, we can always go fall it, but the value of this tree standing as it is for wildlife is far greater than it laying on the ground. You can see Hogan there struggling with some chips in his eyes. I found out afterwards that Dalmar sprays chips pretty bad, so he caught a stream in the eye there and he was fighting with it the whole time. But that's just part of the job. He was nothing but smiles by the time he hit the ground there, so it's kind of funny. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you made it this far, then I guess you're down to listen to me ramble while tree stuff happens in the background, so there'd be a lot more of that. I hope to lean into this as a way to just showcase this incredibly unique job. We work with a lot of cool guys in a lot of cool places, and I try to record as much of it as possible, so if there's anything you'd like to see, let me know. I'll do my best to try and put a video series together to include it, but until then, please like and subscribe so we can get this page up off the ground and I can create more fun content for you all. Thanks.